Some machines define a generation not by their power, but by the feeling they create when the engine turns over and the road opens ahead. There is a kind of quiet rebellion in simplicity. A reminder that freedom does not always roar, sometimes it hums. Across decades of automotive evolution, one compact machine captured that truth better than most. Not through flash or size, but through balance, design, and the undeniable sense that anyone could own a piece of independence. Its legacy is not just measured in miles, but in memories. Not just in mechanics, but in meaning. And though time has moved forward, the fascination remains. What made this small, unassuming vehicle such a symbol of European cool? And how did it manage to stay relevant long after its engine stopped rolling off the line? Let's find out together. If you enjoy deep dives into automotive icons, remember to like, subscribe, and tell us which classic you want covered next. In 1982, Piaggio introduced the Vespa PX80, a compact evolution of its popular PX line that bridged old-world craftsmanship with new-age practicality. The Vespa PX80 was born in a time of shifting European sensibilities. Oil crises had redefined what people expected from transport, and urban centers were growing denser, louder, and more expensive to navigate. Riders wanted efficiency without giving up personality, and that is where the PX80 stepped in. It was small but confident. Its steel monocoque frame carried the unmistakable Vespa silhouette, rounded yet sharp in all the right places. That familiar curving body had become part of Europe's street furniture, as recognizable as a cafe chair or a corner newsstand. Yet in 1982, Vespa did something subtle but significant. It built a version that balanced performance with accessibility. The Vespa PX80 had an 80 cubic centimeters two-stroke engine that produced modest power, but enough to make commuting feel brisk and enjoyable. In most European countries, it fit comfortably within licensing limits for younger riders, opening the brand to a new generation who had never known the post-war boom but still felt nostalgic for its aesthetic. This was crucial, because Vespa was no longer just transportation. It was culture. The PX80 was crafted not only to meet regulations but also to reflect a lifestyle that was simple, stylish, and attainable. The engineering was pure Vespa philosophy. Keep it mechanical, reliable, and easy to maintain. The kickstart ignition, the manual 4-speed gearbox, and the two-stroke mix system required a touch of mechanical sympathy, but that was part of the appeal. Riding a PX80 was a hands-on experience. It asked something of you, and in return it gave character. You felt the engine through your boots, heard its rhythmic tone echo off alley walls, and learned to shift by instinct. It was not fast, but it was alive. In a decade where plastic-bodied mopeds and boxy scooters flooded the market, the Vespa PX80's metal shell felt timeless. The 1980s were a decade of contrast. The high-tech future was arriving fast, but many people looked backward for comfort. The PX80 fit perfectly into that paradox. It looked vintage even when new. Its chrome mirrors and curved mudguards evoked the spirit of the 1960s, yet it offered reliability suited to the 1980s. Piaggio managed to sell nostalgia as practicality, and it worked brilliantly. Young riders loved it because it was affordable and stylish. Older riders appreciated that it carried the torch of classic Italian engineering. And across cities like Berlin, Paris, and Barcelona, the PX80 became more than a ride. It was a social key. Scooter clubs formed around it, and weekend rallies filled European roads with the buzz of small engines and the scent of two-stroke oil. Riders customized their PX80s with mirrors, chrome racks, and bold paint schemes that reflected personality. These gatherings were about freedom and belonging, about finding identity in a world that was rapidly becoming uniform. Vespa, whether intentionally or not, had given them a symbol. The PX80's modest engine size made it approachable. Anyone could ride one, but it took style to own it. That combination of universality and individuality was its magic formula. While the PX80 shared its frame with larger PX models like the PX125 and PX200, its smaller engine gave it a lighter, more agile feel. In cities, that mattered. You could weave through traffic, park almost anywhere, and ride all day on a fraction of the fuel a car would burn. The manual clutch gave a sense of control missing from most automatic scooters of the era. Riders learned to feather the throttle, match revs, and time their shifts perfectly. It rewarded skill, yet forgave mistakes. It felt like a machine designed for people who wanted to participate, not just commute. Economically, the Vespa PX80 arrived at the right time. Youth unemployment was high, fuel costs unpredictable, and new car ownership increasingly out of reach for many. Governments across Europe were encouraging smaller, more efficient transport, and the PX80 ticked all the boxes. But there was more to its success than regulations. It captured hearts because it made people feel something. The shape, the sound, the motion. It all blended into an experience that was both practical and poetic. By the mid-1980s, the Vespa PX80 had become a staple in the European urban landscape. It appeared in films, in fashion shoots, and on postcards. Tourists admired it. Locals relied on it. Its design barely changed, because it didn't need to. Vespa understood that evolution was about refinement, not reinvention. The PX80 received small updates, improved lighting, subtle cosmetic tweaks, but its soul stayed the same. And that consistency built trust. Riders knew what to expect: a scooter that started every morning, carried groceries during the week, and carried dreams on weekends. Culturally, the PX80 aligned perfectly with the post-mod revival sweeping through Europe in the early 1980s. Music, clothing, and attitude all referenced the 1960s, and the Vespa was already part of that DNA. Owning a PX80 was like wearing a well-tailored suit in a world full of tracksuits. It stood for authenticity. It wasn't loud, but it had presence. It wasn't modern, but it was never outdated. In that balance of old and new lay its enduring charm. Mechanically, Piaggio kept things simple for a reason. The PX80's air-cooled two-stroke engine was reliable under pressure and easy to repair with basic tools. Parts were shared across models, ensuring availability and affordability. The clutch system was light, the gearbox robust, and the suspension tuned for European cobblestones rather than perfect pavement. You could feel the road, but not suffer from it. The scooter handled bumps and imperfections with poise, proving that comfort could coexist with connection. Riders loved that tactile feedback. It reminded them they were part of the ride. Through the 1980s, the Vespa PX80 became a kind of urban equalizer. It belonged to students, artists, office workers, and retirees alike. It fit all ages, all lifestyles, and all moods. For some, it was a daily commuter. For others, a weekend escape. But for everyone, it was freedom distilled into two wheels and one spark of ignition. Its affordability meant accessibility, and its elegance meant pride of ownership. The PX80 was proof that beauty and practicality could ride side by side. As we move further into its story, the next chapter reveals how the PX80 went beyond simple mobility to become a symbol of identity. How a small machine inspired loyalty across generations and turned into a cultural phenomenon that still echoes in modern design. By the mid to late 1980s, the Vespa PX80 had become far more than a simple means of transport. It was an emblem of lifestyle and individuality. In a Europe divided by taste and politics but united by youth culture, the PX80 rolled through the streets as a common thread. From London's narrow lanes to Berlin's café districts, the scooter was instantly recognizable. It was light enough for urban agility, but strong enough to carry two passengers with ease. In an age before smartphones and digital networks, it was a moving social connector, a way to meet, travel, and share a sense of belonging. The Vespa PX80 represented a kind of analog freedom that people craved. It wasn't about speed, it was about being part of a scene. This was the era when scooter culture exploded. Clubs flourished, organizing rides that became moving parades of color and chrome. Riders personalized their PX80s with mirrors, rally badges, and accessories that told stories of their journeys. Every modification said something about the rider, and the machine became a mirror of personality. The PX80's simple structure encouraged creativity. The flat panels invited custom paint jobs, and its mechanical accessibility meant anyone with basic tools could tweak, maintain, and even rebuild their engine. That accessibility turned ownership into craftsmanship, and craftsmanship into community. While other scooters focused on comfort or automation, the Vespa PX80 maintained a certain mechanical purity. The rider had to understand the clutch, the throttle, and the rhythm of its two-stroke pulse. There was no automation, no convenience button. Every movement mattered. That mechanical intimacy created a deep connection between rider and machine. It wasn't just about transport, it was about interaction. Many owners remember the sensation of finding the perfect shift point, the distinct sound that told them everything was running right. It was learning through feel, not instruction. The PX80 also benefited from its timing in European markets. New licensing regulations in several countries restricted younger riders to scooters with smaller engine sizes, often capped at 80 cubic centimeters. Piaggio saw opportunity where others saw limitation, offering a model that perfectly fit those legal boundaries. The result was a wave of new riders who entered the Vespa family earlier than ever before. These young owners often stayed loyal as they aged, upgrading later to larger PX models or other Vespa lines. The PX80 became their first taste of independence, the first machine that let them explore on their own schedule. That emotional imprint would keep the brand thriving long after the 1980s ended. Yet the Vespa PX80's influence wasn't limited to youth. Adults embraced it too, drawn by its classic design and reputation for durability. In bustling cities where parking was scarce and traffic unrelenting, it was the perfect companion. It could glide through gridlock, fit into impossible spaces, and deliver economy that cars couldn't match. Commuters learned that it was not just a nostalgic toy but a practical everyday solution. It blurred the line between necessity and pleasure, which was rare for any vehicle, especially one so small. As the decade advanced, other manufacturers began introducing automatic scooters with plastic bodies and more aggressive styling. They were lighter, cheaper to produce, and easier for beginners. But the PX80 stood its ground. It wasn't about the latest technology. It was about authenticity. Riders who chose the PX80 weren't following trends. They were continuing a tradition. It became a quiet rebellion against disposable design. Its metal body felt substantial, its craftsmanship enduring. Owners often said that their PX80s felt alive, as if each had its own personality shaped by years of use and care. That idea, that a machine could hold memory, became part of its mythology. Culturally, the PX80 found itself at the crossroads of art and motion. Photographers loved it, filmmakers used it, and musicians referenced it in imagery. It became shorthand for European cool. Whether parked under neon lights or rolling past centuries-old architecture, it looked at home. Its proportions were perfect. Small but confident, stylish without arrogance. Even those who didn't ride could recognize its silhouette instantly. The Vespa PX80 was not just a scooter, it was design language on wheels. Technically, Piaggio refined its formula with precision. The PX80's chassis was a masterclass in durability. Its monocoque frame offered structural rigidity that improved stability at higher speeds while keeping weight manageable. The front suspension used a single-sided trailing link design that provided predictable handling even on uneven pavement. Braking was handled by a front drum setup that was simple but dependable for the power it produced. The scooter was never meant for racing or high-speed touring. It was engineered for rhythm, balance, and feel. When properly tuned, it delivered smooth acceleration and a top speed that was comfortable yet respectable. Owners could depend on it for years with minimal maintenance. That dependability built community trust, and that trust built culture. Riders began trading parts, restoring older models, and documenting their journeys long before social media existed. The PX80 became a cornerstone of what would later evolve into vintage scooter enthusiasm. Even as production slowed in the 1990s, the demand never faded. Enthusiasts restored them with care, sourcing original components and keeping them alive as moving time capsules. Entire workshops emerged across Europe dedicated to rebuilding PX80 engines, repainting frames, and preserving their original spirit. Unlike many vehicles of its time, the PX80 never disappeared. It simply aged gracefully. At the same time, Vespa continued to modernize its lineup, introducing sleeker models with cleaner emissions and automatic transmissions. But there was something irreplaceable about the PX80. Its sound, its clutch feel, its kickstart ritual, all of it connected to a sense of authenticity that no modern version could replicate. Collectors began to recognize its value, not just financially, but emotionally. The PX80 had become a marker of experience. Owning one said something about taste, patience, and appreciation for mechanics in a world rapidly moving toward automation. Throughout its life, the Vespa PX80 proved that innovation isn't always about adding more. It can be about preserving what works. It balanced nostalgia with necessity, offering a product that resonated across generations. Its longevity was not a fluke. It was the product of good design, cultural timing, and emotional connection. Even those who never owned one could feel its presence on city streets. It was part of the background soundtrack of European life, buzzing quietly through decades of change. In the next segment, we explore how the Vespa PX80 transitioned from an everyday commuter to a collectible icon, how it survived market shifts and environmental regulations, and why it still represents a golden era of urban mobility. By the time the 1990s rolled around, the Vespa PX80 had already earned its place in European culture. What began as a practical response to licensing rules and urban needs evolved into something lasting and symbolic. Cities were changing fast. Cars grew larger, streets more crowded, and the first digital technologies began shaping lifestyles. Yet through it all, the Vespa PX80 kept gliding through traffic with the same confident hum. It no longer needed to prove itself as transportation. It had become part of the city's identity. In Rome, Vienna, and Amsterdam, it was as familiar as the skyline itself. People began to see the PX80 not as a commuter tool, but as an artifact of a more tactile, human era. Collectors and restorers started to recognize the value of the PX80. As modern scooters adopted automatic transmissions and synthetic styling, enthusiasts longed for the simplicity and authenticity of a manual, metal-bodied machine. Workshops popped up across Europe dedicated to bringing these scooters back to life. Restoring a PX80 became an act of preservation, an acknowledgement that good design deserved to endure. Owners documented restorations with pride, from sandblasting frames to matching the original Piaggio paint codes. Each completed build was a statement of continuity, a small victory for craftsmanship in a disposable world. For many, the PX80 represented the bridge between two distinct eras, the mechanical 20th century and the digital 21st. It carried the DNA of post-war innovation, but lived comfortably into the age of information. Its design required patience, its maintenance demanded understanding, and its use rewarded attention. These qualities became virtues in a culture increasingly drawn to instant gratification. The PX80 reminded people that sometimes the slower, more deliberate experience was the richer one. It stood as a quiet protest against the loss of mechanical intimacy. Environmental regulations eventually tightened across Europe, and two-stroke engines faced new scrutiny. Piaggio gradually shifted focus toward cleaner, more modern scooters that met evolving emission standards. Yet the Vespa PX80 refused to fade quietly. Vintage rallies began attracting larger crowds. Restorers fitted catalytic conversions or tuned engines to meet regional laws. The community's dedication proved that love for the PX80 wasn't just nostalgia. It was preservation of a living tradition. Unlike many vehicles that simply disappear when production stops, the PX80 continued to roll, cared for by those who understood its significance. That significance extended beyond the garage. The PX80 appeared in art exhibits, design museums, and advertising campaigns celebrating classic European style. Its silhouette became shorthand for Italian craftsmanship and effortless cool. Modern brands borrowed its aesthetic, the curved lines, the balance of chrome and color, to evoke authenticity in an age of replication. Even non-riders recognized it as a design icon, much like a Leica camera or a vinyl record player. It represented an ideal of timeless function fused with enduring form. On the streets, older PX80s continued to serve daily duties. Students rode them to class, artists to studios, and commuters to work. The sound of a two-stroke engine starting in the morning was still part of urban life. In many ways, the PX80 became invisible precisely because it blended so naturally into the rhythm of European cities. It didn't demand attention, yet everyone noticed it when it passed. That understated charisma became its trademark. As decades passed, the PX80's practicality became nostalgia. Owning one was no longer about saving money. It was about saving a feeling. People restored them for the memories of youth, for the romance of simpler times, or for the craftsmanship that no longer existed in modern manufacturing. It became a rolling conversation between generations. Parents passed them to children, stories attached to every scratch and dent. The PX80 turned from a vehicle into a vessel for memory. Even as technology reshaped mobility, electric scooters, ride-sharing, autonomous concepts, the Vespa PX80 remained relevant in a different way. It offered something technology could not replicate: connection. When you rode a PX80, you felt every vibration, every gear change, every turn of the throttle. It taught you rhythm, balance, and awareness. It asked for your attention, and in return, it gave back something deeply human. That exchange is what made it endure long after production ended. Today, the PX80 is considered a collector's gem. Enthusiasts search for original parts, document serial numbers, and debate paint authenticity online. Some preserve them as static pieces of design history. Others keep them alive on the road, proving their practicality hasn't vanished. Prices have risen steadily as demand grows, especially for unrestored models with documented provenance. But beyond the market, what truly drives the PX80's legacy is emotion. It represents independence, craftsmanship, and the beauty of motion perfected through simplicity. In many ways, the PX80 predicted modern minimalism before the term became fashionable. It delivered exactly what was necessary. Nothing more, nothing less, and did so with style that transcended time. Its balance of utility and grace inspired countless imitations, but none have matched its authenticity. Even in electric conversions, enthusiasts aim to preserve its silhouette and mechanical honesty. The PX80 continues to teach the same lesson it did in 1982. That true design endures because it is both useful and beautiful. And so, as we reach the final stretch of this story, we look at what the Vespa PX80 ultimately left behind. Not just for scooter culture, but for anyone who believes machines can have soul. The next part explores how its influence still shapes urban mobility today, and why the spirit of the PX80 continues to inspire new generations of riders around the world. The Vespa PX80's story does not end with nostalgia. It continues as a living influence woven into the evolution of urban mobility. Even decades after its production ceased, its design philosophy remains visible in countless modern scooters and electric models. Designers and engineers across the world still study its proportions, its frame geometry, and its intuitive ergonomics. What Piaggio achieved with the Vespa PX80 in 1982 was a blueprint for how to make machines human. It was a reminder that transportation could be both personal and universal, both simple and iconic. The PX80's spirit lives on in the growing appreciation for mechanical authenticity. As the world turns toward electric mobility, many riders find themselves craving the tactile connection that older machines offered. The PX80 stands as a benchmark of engagement. It demanded skill and attention, and in exchange it delivered character. When you learned to ride it well, it rewarded you with control that felt earned. That idea, of earning mastery rather than buying convenience, continues to inspire modern scooter communities and restoration circles alike. Culturally, the PX80's influence extends far beyond its physical form. It has become a symbol of sustainable nostalgia, proving that old machines can coexist with modern sensibilities. Many owners have converted PX80s to electric power while keeping their classic bodywork intact, merging the old with the new. These conversions pay homage to the original engineering while preparing it for a cleaner future. It is the perfect metaphor for the Vespa legacy itself. Timeless design adapting gracefully to changing times. In European cities, the PX80 remains a visible reminder that mobility can have soul. It is not uncommon to see one parked beside sleek electric scooters or luxury cars, yet it never looks out of place. Its charm lies in contrast. The hum of its two-stroke engine, once common, now feels special. Its curved panels reflect sunlight in a way that modern plastics cannot. Every detail reminds onlookers that craftsmanship once mattered more than efficiency alone. The PX80's endurance is proof that emotional connection is as powerful a form of sustainability as any technology. Younger generations, many of whom were not alive during its original production, are discovering the PX80 through social media and restoration culture. Online groups trade advice, post rebuild logs, and celebrate even the smallest details: original badges, matching serials, or period-correct tires. For them, the PX80 represents authenticity in an algorithmic world. It is analog, imperfect, and undeniably real. That sense of realness has become its modern relevance. It teaches that design, when done with heart, transcends its era. From an industrial design perspective, the PX80's longevity is remarkable. It avoided obsolescence not through constant updates, but through clarity of purpose. Its lines were honest. Every curve had a reason. The seat was shaped for comfort over style. The handlebar layout favored ergonomics over showmanship, and the frame carried strength without excess weight. It was form following function, perfected through decades of refinement. That honesty is why design schools still reference Vespa in their curricula. It is what timeless design looks like. In the bigger picture, the PX80 also left behind a model for brand loyalty. Piaggio's decision to cater to younger riders with a smaller engine created lifelong customers. Many PX80 owners eventually moved up to larger models, but they never forgot their first scooter. It taught them independence, mechanical skill, and an appreciation for balance. The emotional connection established through those early rides sustained Vespa's reputation long after trends shifted. Even as technology changed, the values that made the PX80 special, simplicity, reliability, and aesthetic harmony, remained at the core of the brand. As electric mobility continues to reshape cities, the PX80's influence echoes in design philosophy rather than mechanical form. Every minimalist commuter scooter, every clean-line electric moped owes something to its visual and structural DNA. The concept of a single unified body, protective leg shields, and balanced weight distribution all trace back to the PX series engineering. Yet none have replicated its soul. It stands as proof that a machine's essence cannot be manufactured through technology alone. It must be designed with empathy. Even in pop culture, the PX80 still appears, often as shorthand for freedom or romance. It evokes imagery of coastal roads, cobblestone alleys, and first adventures. It connects to universal feelings of youth and exploration. That emotional shorthand keeps it relevant in films, fashion, and even advertising. It is not about performance or statistics. It is about what it represents. And what it represents is timeless. The idea that travel can be intimate, joyful, and personal. In the end, the Vespa PX80 is more than a scooter from 1982. It is a design philosophy that continues to influence mobility today. It shows that progress and heritage can complement rather than compete. It reminds us that innovation can coexist with artistry, and that simplicity, when done well, can last forever. Its compact size once symbolized efficiency. Now, it symbolizes mindfulness. Riding one today feels like a conversation across decades, a moment where the past nods to the future in quiet understanding. So when people speak about sustainable design, emotional engineering, or the intersection of culture and mobility, they are often echoing lessons the Vespa PX80 taught long ago. It remains proof that when a machine is built with purpose and grace, it never truly goes out of style. The hum may fade, the chrome may dull, but the feeling it creates endures. And that is the real power of a classic. As we close this story, we return to the same question that defined the PX80 from the beginning. How can something so small make such a lasting impact? The answer lies not in horsepower or speed, but in harmony, between design and human experience, between motion and meaning. That harmony is what made the Vespa PX80 unforgettable, and what ensures its echo will ride on for generations to come.